Hello, tiny people. Here we go again. Sorry, you got to get two films in one day, but I needed to get this in and I didn't want to shortchange the other one. I'm going to go over the first one, Gettysburg, just for a minute or two because I wanted you to have it in writing rather than my just wandering around my dining room presenting things. So, Gettysburg recap. Remember, Lee went north the second time for three reasons. He wanted to bring the destruction of war up north, thinking that the North would then say, whoa, stop, just go be a separate country, Confederacy. He wanted to gain European allies. Even after the Emancipation Proclamation, the South still had dreams of getting Europe, particularly Britain and the fleet, to help. And most importantly, now he wanted to pull Grant's army away from Vicksburg because they were about to take control of the Mississippi, and that would cut off the last of the supplies the Confederacy could get. On July 1st, 1863, the Confederacy arrived in a small group up to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. They were met by a small group of Union cavalry. The Confederacy took the high ground up there on Seminary Ridge. Lee sent Richard Ewell, Stonewall Jackson's replacement, over to the side, said, hey, go get me this other high ground, and Ewell failed. By the end of the day, Meade arrived. That's George Gordon Meade down there. Second day, on July 2nd, 1863, Lee ordered Longstreet to attack Little Round Top, but the Union thought that he was attacking Sickles Salient, where the troops stick out a little farther ahead of the rest of the Union line. And so that's what they were trying to defend, not realizing that the Confederates were after Little Round Top. Well, once that engineer went up to the top of the hill and saw, oh my gosh, if they get this hill, they'll be looking down our lines. They'll be able to just blow us up. We won't even be able to defend ourselves. There was a foot race, and the U.S. saved Little Round Top. End of day two, there had been a terrible cost, but very little was accomplished. July 3rd, 1863, Lee orders Ewell to attack over near Cemetery Hill again. He fails one more time. This is when Lee brings forward all of his 150 cannon. They bombard the Cemetery Ridge, which is where the Union main line is. And remember, they shot short, they shot over, they weren't hitting the defenses. So that's George Pickett there with that good-looking hairdo and beard. And he was ordered with his 15,000 men to race forward and take the middle of the position. And then Lee thought he could cut the Union army in half and beat one side or the other first. And it was a disaster. Pickett's division of 15,000 men was almost wiped out. Lee rode forward, said, it's all been my fault. But after that, after Pickett's charge, the Confederacy really didn't have a chance to win militarily. The Civil War, for all intents and purposes, was over. The South was finished because they didn't have enough soldiers to replace the ones that they were losing. The Confederacy held out 2 more years on guts and generalship because they just wouldn't give up, and they had some really excellent generals. This was the biggest battle of the Civil War. The North lost more than 23,000. The South lost more than 27,000. That's more than 50,000 casualties in 3 days. A little BA trivia for you there. The main football field is Gettysburg. Remember, those are the fields of freedoms. They're named after different battles. Now let's get down to the main purpose for this little talk, Vicksburg. Remember that Grant had gone back and laid siege to the city of Vicksburg. And what that meant was he was starving it out. And he was also bombarding them on nearly a daily basis, shooting cannonballs into the town. So if you look closely at that picture, they didn't live up in the houses. They actually went down around the banks of the Mississippi and dug caves. And that's what's in that picture, a lot of opening for caves. And frankly, some people brought down their carpeting, their dining room sets. They had rather nice little living conditions in there. There were still a few snakes and rats, but it was pretty desperate. As a matter of fact, they held out as long as they could. And on July 3rd, John Pemberton, the Confederate commander at Vicksburg, asked Ulysses Grant, what conditions will you offer? And Grant went back to his old ways of unconditional surrender. He liked that. U.S. Grant, unconditional surrender. That had got his name in the papers before, and he liked the idea. Pemberton said, no, we'll continue to fight then. We'll just hold out till we starve. But the next day he said, I know my people, and they will never be more generous than they will on their nation's birthday. So on July 4th, he asked U.S. Grant again, and Grant was extremely lenient. He said, all right, if you surrender the city to me, then I will let you and your 30,000 soldiers go. You can just leave, go home. Of course, you'll have to leave me almost all of your arms and most of your horses, but for the most part, you can just go home. Now, it sounds like a terribly generous thing, but in actual fact, that was also an act of war. These were 30,000 nearly starved, broken, injured, sick people sent home to the Confederacy, which was starving itself. Remember the Anaconda Plan? They'd been cut off, and now here are 30,000 more people for them to nurse, feed, take care of. But the Anaconda is closed once the city of Vicksburg falls, and now the Eastern Confederacy is on its own. The North owns the Mississippi River. Oh, by the way, if you get your letter, which you should be getting another one soon, you'll see that last little slip of paper, and I want to make sure you understand it. Back in ancient times, the Greek had a code where they would write it out like that picture on the left, whatever message it was, and each of the commanders would have a rod that was exactly the same size, exactly the same diameter. With the message I sent you guys, that's a number 2 pencil. So if you just grab yourself a number 2 pencil and then you wrap it around as I described in the letter, take a look at what those letters on the right say when wrapped around the right size diameter. It says, I am HURT, I am hurt, VER, on the next round, Y, very, BADLY, very badly. I am hurt very badly, help. So now you see another code broken. Thank you, tiny people. We'll be talking at you later.